and look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Peter. All right, let me just hit share screen and get the presentation open up for you. And this should be a full screen in view for you.
We see it, Connie.
Excellent. I wanted to give you a little bit of a background. I am known for Elliott, Gann, and many other technical methods. I'm not known for stochastics. When I launched my Gann book, there was a very brief reference in that book on first steps to Easy Street that was prepared by George Lane. And thank heavens for the communications and feedback. People started emailing me and saying, hey, I don't know what you're referring to because this doesn't exist anywhere on the internet. And I'm thinking, well, that can't be. So after 20 years of research and stuff, I'm pretty good at digging the dark corners of the web. And I found that not only was this not on the internet, there was nothing from George Lane that existed. None of his charts, none of his original writings. Basically, everything that was being written, I knew was not being supported and as documented by him. So what I did is I took a week-long course back in 1988, and I still had this binder and all the materials that had been handed out along with my notes. And it's an interesting time period because in 1987, I was responsible for professional color films in Eastman Kodak. I was not in finance at all. And in 1988, when I went to this course, I was maybe only 4 months into learning about the financial markets. So everything that's written in my notes is by someone simply recording his words, because words like trend and triggers and key reversals and all those terms which are elementary, everything that he was throwing at me in 1 week, I was a total novice. So therefore you don't have the experience that when you write notes, you make some modifications based on your experience. So the notes themselves are his true words, and you're going to be given the entire manual, all of his charts. And my goal today is to give you the guidance of how to go through this massive package of material as prepared by George Lane. So let's get to it. What you have is several of George's original charts. And he was a master in short horizon trading because he used to have a seat in the corn pit. And when he sold his seat, he started one of the first futures organizations that was national. And then when he sold his business, he moved to Waseca, Illinois, and owned all of the grain elevators. That was for that area of Illinois. When he started his course, I was with 8 people. So 7 people who various different experiences, and all came with the same opinion that I see when I'm teaching as well. If you just teach me, look for this one pattern, find all the stars within a series, that is your ticket to Easy Street. Wrong. That's not how it's going to work at all. In fact, you don't even discuss stochastics in his class the entire first day. He wants to go through on the objectives of his seminar, patterns and trend lines and trend of the market and a pattern that he uses as an important trigger. He wants to talk about closing price reversals of trend, which is actually his action plan. Only then does he get into stochastics confirmed by volume, talks about support resistance and risk management and entry exit and so forth. And This created tremendous frustration I saw with the other 7. Here's where it's wrong. Anyway, I can move, great. I'm just going to move you guys in case you also see it up to the top corner. There is in our industry being perpetuated that you need to do something when stochastics crosses 20 or 80. And you're going to walk down that straight line. And if you fall off that line, you're going to do something. If you fall off that line, you're going to do something. But the problem is George Lane had a totally different perspective on stochastics. He never sold stochastics because percentage K or D crossed down through 80. Let me repeat that. He never did. And he never bought it because the signal crossed up through 20. Here is the written proof. In a market returning to the major trend, the short-term trend is up, the intermediate trend is up, and the long-term trend is up. When percentage K reaches the 75% overbought level, the commodity is frequently only halfway to its price high. So there's the first area that vendors are writing, and I'll explain, well, the history of how that came about. You need to purge that. Here's his calculation where you've got your percentage K is up over 75, and he's doing a price swing based on that position in the trend. All of these charts you'll be able to see in detail, so I'm not going to get hung up on any one chart when I know that you've got the guidance on how to read the material that's being given. Here, he also recommends calculating the 1.618. At the time when I'm at this course, recognize I'd never heard the name Fibonacci. My, how times change. And then he talks about taking the profit when K falls below 60. So here's how to read. In this case, a small little circle around the closing price will be a trigger area that he's going to be working with. This is how he pyramids. This would be buy number 2, buy number 3, 4. He's selling 5. So he's net short 1, the same as writing S1. Then he's pyramiding down S2, S3, S4. So if you're new, you're going to find it easier to read his actual trading charts. Here, he's talking about trend on stochastics. And stochastics, he's not necessarily going to be doing an activation, so a trigger point, just because you break that trend line. Here, he's simply describing what happens at 60. He's going to end up taking profits and completely covering all of the positions that he pyramided into this long. All right. George had some different views on what we conventionally call, for example, double bottoms. You're going to see a pattern where there's a series of bars, for example, one after the other, and there's no swing up, swing down, which is what we call a double bottom when we first start teaching it. So you're going to see he actually marks in his trading charts what he calls double bottoms, triple bottoms, but he also started to introduce for us all of the details of what I would call his game plan. Things to start to take a look at patterns. So here he's talking about, and it was, I have to admit, it's kind of funny. And George wouldn't get away with this today, but he would then show the guys Brazilian butts on a bicycle. He would say, now you're not going to forget this, but this is a double bottom, and this is a double bottom, and this is a stronger double bottom than this one. And he would also make references to other oscillators that he would use with stochastics. In this case, this was the first time I had ever heard of ADX. And he says, ADX greater than 28 is a runaway market. Don't use stochastics. And it's true. I find that if you use a D-trend oscillator, therefore not normalized between 100 and 0, it's simply the spread between a moving average. And I'll show you some charts to clarify that. How do you set up stochastics is perhaps the most common question that I receive. And he states in these documents, Use the period that is 1/2 of the cycle you choose to trade. So let's go through that. This is really important. Don't use your software default. He went through a very elaborate explanation. In this example, he actually counted the bars. In this case, you've got 40. In this case, you had 36. So he averaged them, and the average being 38. So the indicator period on stochastics is 19. You're also going to see all the triggers of where he actually was buying and selling. Because most often he, in his tag, which was CompuTrack, where most of us who are speaking today first met, Tim Slater he was the real birth of taking technical analysis away from everybody drawing everything by hand and having a software package that was comprehensive and taking people's ideas and formulas and bringing us all together in what was called a tag, which is 4 days of speakers, and we would repeat twice. We were given 2 hours. So here's an example where I'm taking lows. Now, understand, most people who first start taking a look at fixed cycles are thinking you got to have the market come up and come back down. It's got to come up. It's got to come back down. You got to get a swoop before you get your umbrellas to fit. The problem is markets are more sophisticated than that introduction. It works well in this one. It turns out that there's 44 periods between. So you see stochastics is set at 22. Also notice stochastics, the percentage K is 5, not 3. And every vendor, Bloomberg, TradeStation,